Alright guys, so in today's video we'll be going through how to solve absolute value equations. So this is lesson 2 of unit 2, and so you'll see we have 4 different questions that will be going through 4 different types of topics inside absolute value equations. And so there are a few things you must know when trying to solve absolute value equations. You'll have 2 different equations after getting rid of the absolute value part. So in order to solve these equations, you must get rid of the absolute value and make it into two linear equations, so that you can get 2 different answers compared to when we did normal linear equations when you only had one. And so when making 2 different equations, the first equation is going to be the exact same as the question, except without the absolute value part, and the second equation is the same thing as the first, except what you're going to be doing is you're going to make the right part, or like the constant side, the one which doesn't have the absolute value, you're going to make that part negative. So let's solve this first one so you guys know what I'm talking about. So as always, I'm going to repeat the question. So let me move this over here. Absolute value of x minus 3 equals 6. So now we're going to make them into 2 different equations, and then basically that's going to be, as I said before, just get rid of the absolute value. So it would be x minus 3 is equal to 6. So that's the exact same as the original equation, except you're getting rid of the absolute value part. And then our second equation will be x minus 3. You're just leaving the left side the same, except for getting rid of the absolute value. And then you made the second equation negative. Alright, so when we let's solve these 2 questions. So these are very simple now since we've gone to linear equations, one-step linear equations. So this will be x equals 9 because you're just adding 3 on both sides, just like the x. So same for the other question. And then for this one we have x equals negative 3. So as you can see, we have 2 different equations. So answers basically, and let's check them, right? Let's check if we did this right. And by putting in both of these answers, 9 and negative 3, into the original equation, which was absolute value of x minus 3 is equal to 6, and let's see if both sides are equal. So let's just move this to the side a bit, and then so let's call it the check part. So check. Let's move the check part over here so you guys can see what I'm doing, which is so let's rewrite the equation. So absolute value, and then instead of x, we're gonna pick one of the answers that we got. So let's pick 9. So 9 minus 3 is equal to 6. And so after this, absolute value, right? Basically, whatever goes inside it, and then whatever number you get from it, it's always positive. That's what absolute value is. So 9 minus 3 is 6. So it's the same thing as absolute value of 6, which is 6. So 6 is equal to 6, right? So final is 6 equals 6. So that's how you know that 9 is a valid and correct answer for this question. And let's do negative 3 just to show that we did it correctly. And I'm just going to do it on this question so you guys know what to do and how to do it. The other questions, you feel free to do it on your own, how to do the check part. But let's just do the second check part. So check, and then absolute value of negative 3 this time because we're using the second answer. Negative 3 minus 3 equals 6. And then you would get, so absolute value of negative 6 this time is equal to 6. And as I said before, whatever's in the absolute value becomes positive automatically. And so this would become 6 equals 6. And so as you can see, this is also a correct answer. So you know that x equals 9 and x equals negative 3 are 2 valid and correct answers. So now that we've solved the first question, let's go to the next one. Alright, so we have absolute value of 2x minus 3 equals 7. So this question is not much different than the other one. All we're doing is basically trying to get rid of the absolute value part by making two different linear equations. So we have 2x minus, let's keep it in parentheses, 3 equals 7. And then our second equation, like I said before, 2x minus 3 equals negative 7. So let me just move this to here so it'll be easier. Alright, to solve the first one, we have 2x, so we're just basically moving the 3 to the right, equals 10. And then we'll have x equals 5 because we divide by 2 on both sides. And then for the next question, we have 2x is equal to negative 4 because we're adding x and we're adding 3 on both sides. So then we would have x is equal to negative 2. So now that you see we have two answers, x equals 5 and x equals negative 2, and feel free to try it out on your own to see if this is true by checking it. But for now, let's go to the next question. Alright, so for the next question, we have a slightly more difficult question. This is probably the hardest out of all of these. Maybe the last one, but let's see what we can do. So the way that this question is written is much different than the other ones. The other ones only have an absolute value of like a certain expression on the left side and then a constant on the other. For this one, we have a lot of stuff on the left side, not just the absolute value. So for this, the way to solve these types of questions is basically trying to isolate the absolute value part. So just like how we try to isolate variables in our earlier video. So let's do that. So basically, whenever you're trying to isolate variables, you want to use the reverse of PEMDAS. So that would be SAD-MEP or something. I'm not sure. You guys can pronounce it however you want. But basically what I'm trying to say is you start with the addition and subtraction before going to the multiplication and division. You probably learned this in arithmetics or pre-algebra. So let's do that. So we have 2, let's move this over here, 2 times absolute value of 5x minus 4 plus 4 equals 24. So now, as I said earlier, let's isolate the absolute value of 5x minus 4. So we subtract by 4 on both sides. So we get 2 times the absolute value of 5x minus 4. And then we subtract 4 on both sides, so you get 20. And then now let's get rid of the 2. So we divide by 2 on both sides. So you get absolute value of 5x minus 4 is equal to 10, right? And now that we've gotten it into this position like we did in the other questions, where we have an absolute value and then an equation, absolute value equation on one side, and then we have a constant on the other, let's make two different linear equations. So we have 5x minus 4 equals 10, and then we also have 5x minus 4 equals negative 10. And then let's solve these equations. We have 5x equals 14, and then this will be x equals 14 over 5. I'm going to leave it like that. You can put into a decimal if you want, it's your choice. And then we also have the second equation, which results in, so we have 5, let's get rid of the parentheses, so 5x equals negative 6, and then oops, we have x equals negative 6 over 5. And so these are our two final answers. If you guys want, you can check it to see if I did it right and if you guys did it right. And yeah, let's move on to the next and last question. Alright, so for this question, basically the only difference is that I added a division sign in this question. So it's basically just like solving linear equations, this process up to the absolute value, and then you split it up into two linear equations. So let's do it. So we have the absolute value, oops, let me keep it in the parentheses form, the absolute value of 4x minus 6 plus 8 divided by 3, out of parentheses, oops, equals 14. Alright, so now we just want to do the same thing, so we don't see any. So basically what we do first is disregard the parentheses, because that's what comes last, because we're doing the opposite, right, which is sad map, like I said earlier. So we see a division sign, right, divided by 3 with the whole parentheses, so we want to get rid of that first. So if we have a division sign, we multiply, right, multiply both sides by 3 to get rid of the 3. And so we would have absolute value of 4x minus 6 plus 8 equals, and then this would be 42, because 14 times 3 is 42. And then we have to, oops, carry over the parentheses. Alright, and then we have to, like, a common error when we get to this step is students will tend to go from absolute value of 4x minus 6 plus 8 into absolute value of 4x plus 2. You would combine the negative 6 and the plus 8. Don't do that, because the 4x minus 6 is in its own parentheses, right? That's the only expression. That's the only expression part of absolute value. So next you want to get rid of the 8. So this would be absolute value. So we can get rid of the parentheses now outside it. 4x minus 6 is equal to, and subtract 8 on both sides, which would be, that would be 34. Alright, keep forgetting to carry over my parentheses. There we go. Alright. So then now we've gotten to this form, so let's break it up into two different equations. So we have 4x minus 6 equals 34. And then we also have 4x minus 6 equals negative 34. Let's solve. So 4x equals 40. The same thing as x equals 10. And then the second equation we have 4x equals negative 28. And then we have, oops, x equals negative 7. So there you have it. We have, so mainly what you should know is that you'll find two different answers for your absolute value equations. Make sure when you make sure to isolate. So let's go through like a few steps, just to make it a little simpler. So there are a few steps, right? Step 1 is to isolate the absolute value part, right? Move all of your constants, whatever you have around the absolute value, and move it to the right. Move it to where the constants are. The constants are with the constants. So then after you have the absolute value part, then split it up into two linear equations by making this, getting rid of the absolute value part on the left, and on the right, making one of the equations negative. And after you solve, you get two different values. And if you want, you can check them to be extra sure that you got them right. I advise checking them actually. Make sure you actually check them so it'll be better. So you don't lose points if you're taking a test and then you realize that, oh no, you might as well check them. That's the bottom line. And then, so next video, we'll be going through special cases of absolute value equations. And then I think that'll conclude Unit 2. So it's a relatively short unit. And so yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.